You're listening to Soap Dirt, the latest in television entertainment news.
Hey there, General Hospital soap opera fans. It's Soap Dirt on YouTube, and we have got a huge update on this Haley Pullos DUI drama. There's been a civil case filed against her now, in addition to facing felony DUI charges, and I've got a copy of the civil case here. And I also had the chance to talk today with a highly acclaimed Los Angeles DUI attorney who told us some really fascinating things about the law and why she has gone to rehab, and it's probably not to get cleaned up, according to some of the legal defense strategies that the attorney talked to us about. So we're going to share with you the details of the lawsuit filed by the guy that she plowed into while allegedly intoxicated on alcohol and marijuana edibles. So we're going to read you the high points of this case, and then we're going to talk about why she's in rehab and why it's such a critical part of dealing with the criminal charges, and then she's also facing civil charges as well. And these are very serious. Let me tell you, I was stunned after I talked to this attorney at what punishment she could be facing and why she's making the moves she is making now. Hey, if you haven't already, reach down, click that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our General Hospital updates and spoilers. So the guy that she hit, his name is Courtney Wilder, and this is, I'm reading from his civil suit filed in LA County, and it was filed a day ago. Okay, so the general allegations. On April 29th, 2023 at approximately 1:20 a.m., defendant Haley Pullos drove while drunk and intoxicated on marijuana. She was involved in a hit-and-run collision and then caused a head-on collision with plaintiff Courtney Wilder. Now, mind you, this is not my opinion. I'm reading the allegations in this civil suit. Plaintiff Courtney Wilder was traveling eastbound on State Route 134 Ventura Freeway in the number 4 lane at approximately 60 miles an hour. At the same time, defendant Haley Pullos dangerously and recklessly drove her vehicle the wrong way up the off-ramp to Colorado Boulevard and onto the eastbound freeway in a westbound direction. All right, I'm going to pause reading the suit to explain this to you. When the original report came out from TMZ and some other places, they were saying that her car went over the median and hit this guy head on. No, that was reported by another LA paper and different things. No, she hit a parked car before she got on the freeway and then drove away from that, still driving erratically and dangerously, and then got onto the freeway. She went onto an off-ramp and traveled head-on into oncoming highway high-speed traffic at 1:20 a.m. I'm certain at 1:20 a.m. there was probably not a lot of traffic, so everybody was going at speed, and that's when she crashed into this guy, okay? So this was not sort of something where her car bounced off something. She drove the wrong way onto the freeway, and that's terrifying. So then the suit says that after she entered the freeway, she nearly collided with the vehicle of Gerald Legaspi, and he's labeled as a witness. And this guy, it says, swerved out of her way barely in time. The plaintiff was driving behind Mr. Legaspi and did not have time to react when he saw headlights coming his way. Haley Pullos collided head-on with him, causing severe damage and lasting injuries. The guy driving the other car, they're calling the witness, pulled over, called 911, and stayed there until California Highway Patrol arrived. The guy she hit was transported to Huntington Hospital in critical condition and taken into emergency surgery. And we're going to show you a picture of the crash. You can see how bad it is. This guy was really, really hurt. So it goes on to say, the reason defendant drove so recklessly and dangerously was because she was simultaneously intoxicated with marijuana and drunk on alcohol. And then it goes on, prior to the collision, defendant Haley Pullos intentionally and purposefully drank alcohol well past the point of intoxication and then got behind the wheel of the vehicle. She also ingested marijuana edibles, which were found in her vehicle with empty alcohol containers by police after the collision. The initial report that TMZ made said that there were alcohol bottles in the car, but it didn't detail that they were all empty. And I'm I'm guessing if it's multiple bottles, they were probably small ones, but it doesn't take a lot of tequila, you know? So it says, she then proceeded to drive the wrong way up a freeway off-ramp and onto SR 134, traveling the wrong direction, which resulted in the collision. So this is where, that's bad enough, all right? And this is where things get worse. After the collision, the lawsuit says Haley Pullos had to be removed from the driver's seat of her vehicle by fire department personnel due to the extensive damage from the collision. She was placed into the back of an ambulance. We had heard that Jaws of Life had to get her out. Listen to this. A firefighter attempted to assess defendant's injuries, and she was observed by police hitting the firefighter and exclaiming, "This is a $400 effing shirt." But she didn't say effing. She said the whole word. She was transported to Huntington Hospital for treatment. The police followed her ambulance to the hospital and attempted to obtain information about the collision. The defendant was unable to recall any details due to her, quote, altered state of mind. Then it goes on to say police observed, quote, objective signs and symptoms of intoxication, and defendant was placed under arrest for felony DUI. She became aggressive and began fighting hospital staff and was sedated. Okay. So that is what she is accused of, and that kind of mirrors the criminal charges that she is facing. And then the case goes on to say drunk driving is the second leading cause of fatal car crashes in the U.S., and they talk about California law. Then it gets interesting, the things that the suit says. As alleged in this complaint, Haley Pullos' conduct was despicable and malicious and warrants an award of punitive damage. Such despicable and malicious conduct includes the following. So then they're discussing why the guy should get punitive damages. If you don't know, punitive damages are for pain and suffering. Like you can sue for the value of the car that she crashed into and totaled. He could sue for his medical bills, for any kind of physical therapy, medication, things like that. But then pain and suffering are punitive damages because they're also called non-economic damages. I've had a lesson in DUI law today, let me tell you, with this. So it basically says that she knew that driving under the influence of alcohol was illegal and that getting to an accident was highly likely, and that it was also highly likely that great bodily harm or even death to another person could occur. So, and they're saying that she knew all this, and despite having that knowledge, because, I mean, we all have that, right? That's common sense. Despite all that, she made the intentional choice to drink alcohol well beyond the point of intoxication, knowing she would have to get behind the wheel later that evening. So, and then it goes on, prior to the collision, Haley Pullos hit a parked vehicle and fled the scene of that crime. And this is where it's interesting, because then they're saying she had actual knowledge that if she continued to drive, she would further endanger others and would likely cause another collision. So that's important to note, that she hit a parked car and then decided to keep driving after the first crash, all right? It goes on to say, Haley Pullos' hit-and-run collision did not deter her from further endangering the public. Instead, she proceeded to endanger the safety of others and the plaintiff by driving in the wrong direction up the freeway off-ramp. And it says it was all but certain that she would cause an accident by driving up a freeway off-ramp the wrong way. Of course. And it says such conduct is reckless, malicious, and criminal. And it says this conduct goes well beyond the bounds of decency. They are not mincing words in this lawsuit. They go on and talk about how she acted to first responders. This section says Haley Pullos acted maliciously and without any regard for the safety of others, as evidenced by her rage when she was pulled from her vehicle by first responders. She acted maliciously by attacking the officers and yelling profanities in front of witnesses and directed towards those trying to help her. In her fit of rage, Haley Pullos battered a firefighter and yelled at him to take his hands off her $400 effing shirt. Despite having just caused 2 accidents, one of which resulted in serious, life-threatening injuries, she cared more about her overpriced clothing than she did the safety and well-being of the victims of her reckless, intentional, and despicable conduct. The language here, and I understand this language and why they're using it, as more evidence of her aberrant behavior. Aberrant's a fancy word for horrible. Haley Pullos continued to fight medical staff and was forced to be sedated. Not only was Haley Pullos driving under the influence of drugs and alcohol, but she was drinking behind the wheel, as evidenced by the edible wrappers and empty alcohol bottles which were found in her vehicle. Photos from the scene show the two vehicles mangled. So this civil suit is alleging that she didn't just drink and get drunk into the car. They allege that she was actively drinking and eating those edibles while behind the wheel, and that's why all the wrappers and everything were there. That's what they are saying. And of course, they're saying all this to ask for punitive damages, but I mean, it's pretty bad. So there's a list of the charges against her. She is facing felony DUI. So the timeline of this is this accident happened on April 29th. And then several weeks later, she had said, or a couple weeks later, she said she was taking time off work because she was recuperating from a car accident. And she made it sound very mild. This is far from mild. This is terrible behavior. I mean, I think we can all agree on that. And then her dad dropped her off at rehab. And a lot of people are like, oh, I'm glad she's getting help. That's what I thought too. Oh, I'm glad she's getting help. Then I talked to the DUI lawyer today, and I found out what's so important about the fact that she is in rehab. All right. So the DUI lawyer I talked to, Michael Bialis, he's a top DUI lawyer in LA. And he talked about that generally in any DUI case, because this is what he does all day long, all year long, DUI cases, he said there's generally always an approach, but in this case, he said that there's no way to litigate this case, that the only thing to do is to try and mitigate it, okay? And he gave me a quick, rapid education on DUI law in California. And what she's facing is a felony with great bodily injury. That's the most important charge because this guy was gravely injured. He had to have surgery. And he said that the great bodily injury would apply even if the person you hit had a broken arm or needed stitches. Basically, anything that needed some kind of invasive medical treatment, all right? And they call that a strike, okay? And with a strike, on that charge, she could get up to 3 years total in prison. He said a lot of times they'll do 180 days in county jail, which is 6 months, and then, or they can just put you straight into prison, or you can do 180 days in county, and then you might go to state for the remainder. But he said her exposure right now is up to 6 years in prison based on the charges against her. And he said basically there are a whole bunch of aggravating circumstances to her case. And he said the hit and run is a huge problem because she'd had one accident and then kept going. That's an aggravating circumstances. That's what makes the court look at you more harshly. The combination of both alcohol and drugs is an aggravating circumstance. Her behavior towards the first responders and her aggression at the hospital, allegedly, but witnessed by police, all aggravating circumstances. He said that this is a case that's extremely difficult to defend. And he said what's important to know is the rehab thing. And he said he expects her to be in rehab for 6 months to a year. He said if she was his client, he would have her in there for at least a year. And the question is, why? Why go to rehab? She didn't go immediately. Like if you had a substance abuse problem and then you get arrested, maybe your family goes, okay, you need to go to rehab. She didn't go to rehab until after the news broke, until after this made headlines. And I want to tell you something really important about the rehab. This may surprise you to learn, because it frankly shocked me, that basically he said that this case is not about litigating, it's about mitigating. And what he meant by that, he said, is that as a lawyer, you don't want a case like Haley Pullos's to go to court because it's indefensible. He said you have to establish that she was behind the wheel, that she was driving under the influence. And because she hit another car head on and there were police and witnesses, there's no way to dispute that she was behind the wheel. There's no way to dispute that she was driving the wrong way on a freeway. There is no way to dispute that she had high levels of marijuana and alcohol in her system, because he said it's mandatory that the police take your blood in a case like this. So they may not have a breathalyzer, but that won't matter. They will have blood proof of her blood alcohol levels and marijuana in her system. So basically he said there's no way to defend against the charges because they're all eminently provable. Okay, so the only thing you can do is try and mitigate that through a plea deal, through bargaining with the DA, trying to work out a sentence. He said, you don't want this to go to the jury trial, because then at the jury trial, they bring in the victim, the one guy she almost hit, the other person that she actually hit. They get to see photos of his injuries. They get to hear from the police that she was sassing. They get to hear from the firefighter that she was hitting. That all looks really bad in court and can definitely see you get more time in jail. He said that he would not let this go, if it was his client, past the preliminary hearing, that he would work hard to cut a deal. So this is the interesting thing about California DUI law. Her going into rehab, that time she spends in rehab, whether it's 6 months or a year, whatever, however long she's there, the judge can apply a doctrine called nunc pro tunc. That is Latin, and it basically means now for then. And I'll explain how it applies. So right now she's in rehab and she's spending a certain amount of time there. Then when this criminal charge goes to court and she faces whatever sentence, say that they mandate that she has 180 days in county jail, 6 months. Say that she's sentenced to 6 months in county jail. Her lawyer can then ask the judge for nunc pro tunc, which basically means that 6 months in rehab will count as time served in jail. Okay, you get that? She is in a luxury Malibu rehab center right now, and all the time she spends at this $2,600 a week Malibu luxury facility can be substituted in retroactively for jail time, okay? We're gonna show you some pictures. They may already be showing at this point in the video of what this Malibu rehab center looks like. She is at the Malibu Detox and Residential Treatment Center. So in addition to having therapy and all that, and admittedly, if you know, that's all important, but at the same time, having a DUI does not mean that you have an addiction. I just want to clarify that. I think most people know that you can get drunk, get behind the wheel, do something stupid and drive and hurt someone, and then there are addiction issues. They don't always coincide. So just because she's in rehab does not actually mean that she has alcohol addiction. This might have been just one night of really bad judgment. But the point of going to rehab is to be able to use that time to take away from any prison time that she's sentenced to. That's the important part. All right. Now picture county jail in LA County. You're in the orange jumpsuit. You're in a cell with, I don't know how many people. You're not in a private cell. You're going to be in there with at least one other person, but maybe several other people. You're eating crappy food and you're in jail, you know, and if it's state jail, it's even worse. Right now, the time she's doing at this luxury Malibu rehab could substitute in for that. And I'm going to read you a couple of things about this Malibu detox center. It says, when you arrive, you'll receive a warm greeting from our staff, helping you form an instant connection of trust and mutual respect. You'll get a tour of the facility and we'll provide you with a welcome package complete with a notebook, pens, lotions, creams, chapstick, and more before you get settled in. And you can see some of the pictures of the nice bedrooms, the view of the Pacific Ocean from the Malibu Hills, the luxury accommodations, and then their website says they have first-rate facilities. We have everything you need to feel settled here, from fluffy towels and blankets in your room to TV, including Apple TV and movies, as well as a gourmet chef that can accommodate all dietary restrictions. Our friendly team will be on hand should you have any questions or requests. We do our best to accommodate you. Doesn't that sound nice? It's like the Hilton. It's like the Hilton, and this will count as long as she has a good lawyer, and I'm assuming she does. This will count against any time that she is sentenced to. What do you think about that? They have art therapy, equine therapy, all that. And I understand rehab centers do good work. I'm not saying they don't, and I'm not saying they're not important. I am saying what's really shocking to me is that you can spend time at a luxury spa-like facility and that be deducted from any time that you are sentenced to for your felony DUI. Isn't that amazing? I do want to thank attorney Michael Bialis. I'm going to put a little link to his website if you're in LA and you have a DUI. He's one to call. He said that this is not his kind of case. He doesn't care for celebrity cases, and this is one that's indefensible. That's why he said mitigation instead of litigation. So I'm going to put up, we're also going to show you little sections from the civil suit here, but we would love to know in the comments what you think. So the other consideration with this civil suit is the guy is asking for punitive damages. In the state of California, these are very limited. In other states, you can sue people for pain and suffering and get millions if they've done something heinous to you. In the state of California, the maximum you can get for pain and suffering is $250,000. And that sounds like a lot, but if you consider the after effects of a lifetime of the after effects of a catastrophic car injury, this guy could have a lifetime of pain ahead, depending on what happened to him and what kind of surgery that he had to have. And then the DUI attorney pointed out something else interesting to me. I'll tell you about that in 1 second. But first, if you haven't, reach down, click that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our General Hospital spoilers, news, and special reports like this. So what he said is that, she's in rehab right now, and he said if she was his client, he'd have her in there for at least a year. That means she's not working. Her role's already been recast on General Hospital, and initially she said the recast was because she was recuperating. At that point that she made that announcement, I'm not sure that, I don't know if her lawyer had already advised her to go to rehab. We don't know the timeline on that, but she's got no earning potential right now. If she's going to stay in rehab to avoid jail, I mean, of course, you'd want to avoid jail, but it's just shocking that if you can afford an alternative like that you can spend, a year living in a luxury facility and then avoid jail, which a lot of people cannot afford to do, So he said that with her having no earning potential for as long as she's in rehab because she can't work, and then if the soap opera fires her, then she has no earning potential. He said even if the court awards this guy everything he's asking for, then he may never see a nickel of it if she simply can't afford to pay it because she's not employable after this. It remains the question of will General Hospital fire her? Well, after talking to this DUI lawyer and hearing him explain to me how going to rehab can sub in for jail time, I would fully expect her to be in rehab for at least 6 months. And that means that she can't work at General Hospital, and it likely means that they are going to have to let her go. I mean, the news broke this week that ABC won a summary judgment in the case against Ingo Rademacher. He was let go from General Hospital for not wanting to get the COVID shot. And the whole premise behind the vaccine is that if you don't get the shot, then you can hurt other people if you infect them. All right, bearing in mind that premise. So he was fired. Steve Burton was fired because they didn't get the shot, and they could have possibly hurt other people if they had spread COVID around. That's the whole basis of the vaccine policy. This is a case where an actor from the show has provably and demonstrably hurt someone in the conduct of an alleged felony. So, it's hard to imagine that General Hospital would not fire her once all this comes out. But we'll have to wait and see. And a lot of fans, pretty much all the comments that I have seen on social media, bar none, are not very sympathetic towards her because of the egregious nature of what she's accused of. Let us know in the comments what you think and whether you're surprised about this information that luxury rehab is a substitute for jail time. And if she stays in there a year and she's sentenced to a year for the felony DUI, she could spend a year hanging out in Malibu and then not have to spend 1 day in jail. Interesting thing about California law, right?
Thank you for being a loyal listener. Follow us wherever you get your podcast, because you don't want to miss the next episode. Soap Dirt is on all the major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcast, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and more.